I was a newly single mother. I was checking my bank account 3 times a day, watching the number get smaller and smaller, doing the math in my head like, okay, if I don't get another client by the 15th, I can't make rent. And right at that rock bottom moment, when I was genuinely terrified I was about to be evicted, I had a client who was making my life absolutely miserable. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of the client that almost made me quit this entire design career and how the terrifying decision to fire them became one of the most important moments of my business. Hey, I'm Amelia Thedmore, and if you're new here, this channel is all about helping you turn your passion for design into paying work. But this one's different because I'm going to be open with you here about the moment when I almost walked away from all of it. And if you've ever felt like an imposter, if you've ever had that voice that says, who are you to call yourself a designer? This story is for you. To understand the full story, we have to go back in time. So let me set the scene for you. It's about 6 months into my solo design business. I've left my accounting job. My fiance has left me because I chose this dream over our relationship. And here I am trying to build something from absolutely nothing while taking care of my daughter. After most of my savings were used up, the feast or famine cycle was in full effect. Some weeks I have projects, some weeks I have nothing, and my bank account is giving me that same Sunday night dread that I used to get before my accounting job. And then I got this client. At first, I thought they were going to save me. They had a decent budget, around $3,500 for their living room and entryway. They seemed excited about the project, and I desperately needed the money. But pretty quickly, things started to go wrong. The scope just kept expanding. Oh, while you're designing the living room, can you just take a quick look at the kitchen? It won't take long. I know we said 3 revisions, but I'm still not sure about this. Can we try one more option? Maybe 2 more? Actually, I'm thinking we should redo the whole color scheme. I saw this room on Pinterest, and every time I tried to address it, tried to remind them what we'd agreed to in our initial conversation, they'd question my pricing. That seems like a lot for just changing some throw pillows. I thought designers just had an eye for this stuff. Why does it take so long? My friend said her designer only charged her. I remember one specific moment. I'd spent 4 hours sourcing the perfect rug for their space. Found this gorgeous vintage Persian rug that was exactly what they needed in their budget, and it tied the whole room together. I sent them the link, so proud of this find. Their response, are you sure that's how a real designer would do this? I feel like a professional would have more options for me to choose from. That was the absolute worst part. They kept poking at my deepest insecurity, my lack of formal degree. They'd say things like, are you sure that's how a real designer would approach this? Or, I saw this other designer's portfolio and they went to Parsons. Do you think we should get a second opinion? Every single word just fed that voice in my head, the one that was already screaming, you're a fraud. And here's what nobody tells you about imposter syndrome. It's not just in your head. It becomes real when you let someone else's doubt become your doubt. I would get these text messages at 11 p.m., just random questions or concerns that could have waited until morning, but they'd send them anyway. And I'd respond immediately because I thought I needed to prove that I was professional, that I was responsive, that I was worth what I was charging. I was bending over backwards, working nights and weekends, trying to make them happy, trying to prove that I belonged in this industry. And you know what's crazy? That old Sunday night sickness that I used to get at my accounting job, it was coming back. I'd gotten away from the spreadsheets and the fluorescent lights, but I'd somehow recreated that same miserable dynamic in my dream career. I was working for someone who didn't respect me, questioning my own value every single day, and feeling trapped because I needed the money. And then one night, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, staring at another late night text from this client. Something about not liking the rug I'd sourced after they'd eventually approved it. And I just broke down, like full crying at the kitchen table at midnight, my daughter asleep in the next room, wondering what the hell I'd done with my life. And then I remembered something, the ultimatum, from my fiance, the one where he made me choose between this design thing and our relationship. This needs to stop, Amelia, he'd said. This whole design thing, choose. This ends or we do. And I chose the design thing. I chose my dream over his need for me to play it safe. That choice had cost me my relationship, my financial security, everything I thought I was supposed to want. And now, sitting at that kitchen table, I realized this client was giving me another ultimatum. It wasn't out loud this time, but it was just as real. My fear versus my dream all over again. Was I going to let this one person who clearly didn't respect me, who was draining every ounce of joy from the career I'd sacrificed everything for, make me feel like a fraud? Or was I finally going to decide that I was a professional, with or without a degree hanging on my wall? Because here's the thing I realized in that moment. That voice in my head that said, "You're not a real designer," wasn't my voice. It was his voice. It was my client's voice. It was every person who ever suggested that passion and talent weren't enough if you didn't have the right credentials. But it wasn't my truth. So the next morning, with my hands literally shaking, I wrote the email. I didn't write some long explanation. I didn't apologize or over-explain or try to convince them it was a mutual decision. I just said that after careful consideration, I didn't think we were the right fit for each other, and I'd be refunding their deposit for the remaining work. And then I pressed send before I could talk myself out of it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I immediately wanted to throw up. My brain went into full panic mode. What did you just do? You just fired the only client you have. You just set fire to the last bit of money you had coming in. You're going to get evicted. This is insane. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my email, expecting him to respond with some angry message that would make me feel even worse. But you know what happened the next morning? The terror was gone. It was replaced by something I hadn't felt in months. Confidence. Not the fake confidence when you're trying to convince yourself you know what you're doing. Real confidence. For the first time since I'd started this business, I felt like a real designer. Not because I had suddenly got a degree overnight, not because I'd landed some huge project or gotten some external validation, but because I had drawn a line. I had defined my worth. I had said, this is what I'm worth, and if you can't see that, we're not a fit. And that decision, that one terrifying decision to choose myself, changed everything. But here's where the story gets even more important, because firing that client didn't just make me better, it forced me to make a vow. I promised myself I would never be in that position again. I would never let a client make me feel small. I would never work nights and weekends trying to prove my worth to someone who fundamentally didn't respect what I did. And the only way to make sure that that never happened again was to stop hustling and start building systems, not just being organized, not just communicating better, a system for client contracts that clearly defined scope and boundaries. Another one for setting expectations from day one about communication, revision, and what was included. One more for attracting only the right clients, the ones who valued what I brought to the table, so I'd never have to deal with the wrong ones again. Because here's what I figured out, and this is the part that's going to change everything for you if you're struggling with imposter syndrome right now. Your imposter syndrome isn't going to be cured by a 4-year degree. It's not going to be cured by taking more courses or reading more books or spending another year preparing. It's cured the moment you have a step-by-step professional system that delivers a predictable result for a client. That's it. That's the secret. Your authority doesn't come from a piece of paper on your wall. It comes from your process. When you have a clear system for onboarding clients, for gathering information, for presenting your designs, for managing revisions, for delivering the final result, that's when you become a professional. Because you know what clients actually value? They don't care where you went to school. They care that you have a clear, streamlined system that's going to get them from, "My house feels wrong and I don't know why," to, "Oh my God, I love coming home now." They care about results. They care about the process. They care about feeling taken care of. And a system does all of that. After I fired that client, I spent the next few weeks building out my entire business system, how I qualified leads, how I presented my packages, how I structured my contracts, how I communicated boundaries. And you know what happened? The next client I took on was completely different. They respected my process. They trusted my expertise. They paid my full rate without negotiating. They referred me to 3 of their friends because I wasn't operating from fear and desperation anymore. I was operating from confidence and clarity. And that confidence came from having a system I believed in. So if you're watching this and you're feeling stuck in analysis paralysis, if you're terrified of being exposed as a fraud, if you keep putting off actually calling yourself a designer because you don't have the right credentials, it's not because you lack passion. It's not because you're not talented enough. It's because you lack a system. And I'm not just saying that to sound clever. I'm saying that because it's true. The difference between feeling like an imposter and feeling like a professional isn't a degree. It's having a repeatable process that you trust and that your clients can trust. That's what I figured out after firing that nightmare client. That's what allowed me to scale my business from that rock bottom moment to $55,000 a month. That's what my students now use to get their clients predictably without that feast or famine chaos. So I created a free training that walks you through the exact system I built after firing that client. It's the same system I use in my business today. It's the same system I teach in the Interior Academy. And it's specifically designed for people like you, people who have the eye, who have the passion, but who need the structure and confidence to actually turn that into professional work. The link is in the description below this video. Click it, watch the training, and then take action. Because here's what I want you to understand, design friends. That voice that tells you you're not ready, that voice that says you need one more course, one more credential, one more year of preparation, that voice is lying to you. You already have the eye. You already have the passion. You just need the right approach. And then you get to choose yourself the way that I chose myself when I fired that client. You get to draw your line. You get to define your worth. You get to become the professional you already are. It's time to stop feeling like an imposter and start being the designer you already are. Thanks for watching, design friends. I'll see you in the next one.